Well, hello everyone. This is Rennie Thibault, Vice President of Sales here at Savant Protection. Thank you for attending Savant Protection's webinar entitled Extending the Life of Windows XP with Application Whitelisting. Our agenda for today will include an overview of the implications of XP end of support effective today, April the 8th. What are your options going forward? How to attain strong security on XP systems and be compliant, and we'll provide an overview and a demonstration of Savant Enforcer. If you have any questions during the webinar or would like to request a copy of the presentation, please use the chat feature. We will address all questions at the conclusion of the session. Also, the session is being recorded and will be posted on our website within just a few days. The implication of end of support for XP translates to no more security patches after today. And without these security patches, unknown vulnerabilities can expose business data, intellectual property, and credit card and debit card data. And this can create what are known as zero-day forever scenarios, which is to say that if a vulnerability in the operating system is discovered, the publisher, Microsoft in this case, will not be issuing security patches, and so needless to say that creates a bit of a problem. There's also concern about third-party applications, and these will be an ongoing concern as many of the major suppliers have not committed to patching their applications beyond the end of support for Windows XP. I happen to have an XP machine in my home office, and if you have access to one, you've probably been seeing little system pop-up trays on a daily basis indicating that end of support is coming. I was surprised to learn that that also translates to Microsoft Security Essentials support coming to an end as well. So even the antivirus on that product is not going to be something that you can rely on to find known malware. And of course, regulatory, legal, and reputational concerns come into the mix as well in this kind of a scenario. So the option would be do nothing. You can upgrade the hardware and the software, or both, if the current hardware can run a later version of the operating system. I've spoken with a number of prospects of late who are faced with $1,000 expense per machine. One prospect the other day suggested that by putting Savant Enforcer in place, a measure to protect against the issues that arise, that by putting Savant in place, they could pay for Savant and not have to spend that money on several different fronts. Network isolation is a possibility, but it's probably not practical in a highly connected environment such as that of a credit union. Virtualization is another option, but that's something that's fairly time-consuming, and I would think if that was part of your plan that you'd be well underway in dealing with that right now. However, application whitelisting is the fastest and most efficient solution for addressing XP machines. By putting deny by default policy in place, we're going to block the execution of any and all unauthorized executables. And application whitelisting also creates a compensating security control to regular patching and updates which are no longer available. And we have a number of customers who have gone and worked with their QSA and received compensating control dispositions for their security strategy. The XP endpoint security gap, whether you're running Windows 7 or XP or some other Microsoft operating system, there's an existing gap today, which is that antivirus can only stop what it knows about. Patching is helpful as long as the patches are available, and other approaches to protecting the endpoint, like group policies and personal firewalls, etc., deal with a whole set of stuff, but they still leave a gap. And that gap is to 0 days, targeted attacks, unknown malware, insider attacks, or insider mistakes. And that gap is what Savant is focused on. Our value proposition is to close that security gap by stopping targeted attacks, unknown malware in 0 days, and to block malware that antivirus solutions can't detect because they don't have a signature for them. The result is the ability to dramatically reduce the risk of a data breach, by preventing unauthorized installations, configuration changes. Even the upload or download of data is addressed as part of a whitelisting solution. In the Savant environment, we can block propagation and lateral movement because we automatically create a unique and encrypted whitelist on each of the endpoints. And so a copy of word.exe on machine A will have a key that's unique, and therefore that executable could not run on machine B, also protected by Savant. The use of application whitelisting can result in hard dollar savings in terms of lower IT management costs. We're going to help provide detailed insight into what's running on every individual endpoint. The use of application whitelisting can eliminate system rebuilds and extensive technical time spent trying to clean up machines that have been infected. I have a couple of managed service providers who claim that their support costs have been reduced by 80% when they don't have to spend time going back out to an endpoint trying to clean it up, run malware bytes on it to get it right, or worst case, have to re-image the machine. On average, we hear in the marketplace that the rebuilding of an endpoint can take 2 to 4 hours. The logging capability that comes along with a product like this can help attain compliance requirements by logging authorized changes or attempted changes that have been blocked on all of the endpoints. And so as a result, this approach can extend the life of XP systems. What's different about the Savant approach can be summarized in 3 points. We maintain that we have a more secure endpoint solution because of our patented, unique encrypted whitelist that is stored locally on each endpoint. And that local whitelist is encrypted and protected from all access by the driver. This approach stops proliferation of any potential compromise to any other Savant protected endpoint. And unlike central whitelist solutions, we have no single point of failure, which is how we defend our argument that we have a stronger whitelisting solution. The second component to the secret sauce is the ability to intelligently manage change. And so to the extent that in the XP environment or any other operating system environment for that matter, is that we integrate with third-party solutions in order to support automatic updates. So for example, Internet Explorer updates or Adobe updates and so on are automatically permitted as part of the Savant environment, and our protection is never interrupted even while these trusted changes are occurring. Another example of trusted change would be signature updates from the antivirus provider. And lastly, we include a full local user interface on every endpoint so that the systems can operate connected or disconnected because we have no reliance on a central whitelist. And the product is downloadable and can include a full range of user privileges from totally locked down, you can't change anything, to at the other end of the spectrum, an IT admin who has, of course, access to all of the privileges and functionality of the system. So how does whitelisting work? Simply put, each application that requests computing resources must present a unique key that is validated to that system. So if the Word application is presented, Savant checks for a valid key and then allows it to proceed to the CPU. If anything unknown, which might be bad or might just be out of policy, is presented, then it's going to be denied. The Savant solution consists of 2 products. The Enforcer, which is a fully downloadable client. It's a unique and strong agent that's easy to distribute and use. The other component is the Savant Enforcer Manager, which is a web-based configuration manager that can be hosted by us or can be local to your organization. And depending on how many machines you're looking to protect, The Savant Enforcer Manager is optional because you can fully configure each endpoint locally if you chose to do that. I mean, generally speaking, if you get beyond 5 or 7 or 10 endpoints, then you're going to want the benefit of a central management capability, which is not used to manage the whitelist, but rather to manage privileges and configuration. Whitelists are managed individually on each endpoint, which is a big part of what keeps this thing simple and easy to use. So as I mentioned, standalone or managed solution, because we have no reliance on a central resources, we have no single point of failure. So in the unlikely event, which I think did happen not too long ago with a whitelisting solution provider, a key was compromised to a particular executable, and that key, which should not have been authorized, was pushed out to lots of machines because it's a central approach. At the time of installation, Savant automatically creates a list of all of the approved executables and maintains it going forward. And in the Savant approach, we not only whitelist the authorized executables, we also authorize all of the underlying .dll, .sys files. And when compared with some of our competitors, that represents 10x more individual executables that are protected than in other solutions. And our customers agree that that's a more secure approach. The graphical user interface of Savant Enforcer enables local configuration, and the protection can match your organization's security policies. So, for example, an unauthorized user would be totally locked down, or a hardened machine where they would have no privileges, no access to make any changes to the machine. A privileged user could be an IT admin, full access to everything, or could be an executive who perhaps needs to install or uninstall software without going to the IT department for approval. From a deployment standpoint, Savant Enforcer can be deployed into an existing environment or as part of an image for new systems. Into an existing environment, the install is silent and no reboot is required. When deployed as part of an image, we offer the ability to create a whitelist which can be replicated over multiple systems if that's a desired approach, but we always maintain the ability to regenerate the whitelist keys on each individual endpoint in order to maintain that higher level of security that's afforded by a unique list on each endpoint. In either event, all relevant activity on the endpoint is logged. Actions related to allowing or denying things are all logged along with any contextual data, and the logs can be, and indeed are, maintained locally and can be maintained remotely at the Savant Enforcer Manager, or those logs can be sent to a third-party syslog system or security information and event management system. Example number one of an unauthorized user in lockdown mode means that executables cannot be written to disk regardless of their source, whether they come from the hard drive, the CD drive, the USB drive, whatever. We're not going to allow anything onto that machine, and the user cannot add, modify, or delete any software. And as you can see here, this unauthorized user, all privileges are denied locally. I mentioned our ability to provide some control over external storage devices. These can be configured. For example, the USB stick, you may prevent any access on or off of the machine, might be read-only or be read and or write. So in spite of the fact that with application whitelisting in place, where we're going to prevent anything new from coming on the machine or anything running that's not on the list, that deals with executables. In the case of these external storage devices, what we're adding to our functionality is the ability to prevent data files from going on or off of the machine, in addition to protecting against executables that are not authorized. In the case of an authorized user, and I'm showing a slightly different mode here. You saw lockdown mode a minute ago. Protected mode is identical to lockdown mode, with the exception being that protected mode allows a new executable, a new installer, a new MSI to come onto the machine. It won't run because it's not on the whitelist. And so in order to get that new executable or installer onto the whitelist, it has to be installed through Savant so that we can automatically update the whitelist on that particular endpoint. So again, just to reiterate, in protected mode, you still get the benefit of no executables can be written to the disk, regardless of their source, unless the mode has been changed to protected. And then it still won't run unless it's installed through Savant. That user still can't add, modify, or delete any software unless it's done through the Savant Enforcer user interface. So as I mentioned earlier, an example of an executive might only have the privilege to install software. They might have to provide a reason. You could configure so that they can install software, but they need approval from IT, in which case we'd send a text or an email off to an IT person who would take a look at what that user wants to do. And you might allow them to uninstall software themselves. But the rest of these things, like authorizing individual executables or unauthorizing them or getting to any of the advanced functionality, those features would be reserved for an IT admin and not for a typical user, even if it is an executive. The intelligent change component of Savant is what allows authorized modifications and updates to occur to the local database. So again, I'll go back to the example of Adobe updates or browser updates, etc. Those are going to be configured in Savant as trusted sources of change, and those updates and modifications are going to be permitted. However, the protection against all other unknown and untrusted actions is never disabled, not even temporarily. And of course, everything is going to be logged, things that were authorized or things that were blocked or any unauthorized attempts to make changes to the system. Now, these trusted processes could include things like SCCM, Altiris, Kaseya, Landesk, LogMeIn. These are all potential sources of trusted change where modifications would be allowed without any interference from Savant Enforcer. Of course, these would include direct updates from third parties. From a logging standpoint, as I mentioned, everything is logged locally on the endpoint and then can be uploaded to other points, but that logging is going to include any installs, denies, or changes allowed. And the log types could be the local enforcer database, Windows event logs, the Savant Enforcer Manager, or a large number of security information management systems that we have integrated with. So just a couple of customer use cases for you to get a sense of Savant's deployment in the credit union environment. In example A, there's a couple of hundred endpoints, and all of them are in 100% lockdown. That customer uses Sophos for their antivirus and endpoint firewall. And the customer's viewpoint is that, in this case, he's more concerned with security and efficiency over that of the user experience. And what he means is he'd rather take calls from the end users complaining about how they can't install new software on their endpoint, but rather engage them in a conversation to understand what it is they're trying to do, why they need to do it. So he views the advantage of Savant as creating kind of a simple red light, green light, yes you can, no you can't. He's very enthusiastic about his ability to prove to auditors that data is not being taken off of machines via CDs or USB sticks or malicious or negligent insiders. And a couple of quotes when we finished up our interview with this customer was, since deploying Savant, he sleeps much better at night, and Savant is his last line of defense. Another credit union customer with a little bit smaller, 50 endpoints, they've chosen to have us host the management console for them, so it's in our data center, and one of the benefits to having Savant host the management console is that our technicians are regularly looking at what's happening in that system environment. And if we see something that looks like, geez, this is being blocked and maybe it should be permitted, that puts us in a position to proactively contact the customer and say, we're blocking this right now. We can continue to do that. Or if you think this may be something that's needed in your environment, then we can put the necessary filter set in place, which is the vehicle for dealing with intelligent change management. So the recap from Credit Union B, the smaller of the two examples we're using here, security is his top priority. He uses the install request feature, which the example would be if I'm here at my desk and I want to install iTunes, I bring it onto my machine in protected mode. I double-click on iTunes. That brings up the Savant user interface that says, you need to give us a reason for why you want to do this, and then says you'll be notified when your request has been processed. So the IT admin will then be notified of a request to install software. And so what that does is it creates a dialogue between IT and the end user about why do you need this before just going ahead and installing it. For new machines deployed in that environment, Savant is preloaded as part of the image, and as soon as that machine comes up, it automatically connects back to the management console and gets deployed with the appropriate set of privileges and is put into lockdown mode. This customer, a couple of quotes as we wrapped up the interview with them, said, I chose Savant after asking myself, what else can I do to never have a problem? And the answer for him was to put application whitelisting in place. He commented that he had previously used Norton antivirus, but in spite of that, he was still finding malware issues, and it really has to do with unknown malware that's targeted at someone that's just not out in the general population, and so there's no signature that exists for it. And he was able to get away from some of the complaints about slow-running machines when the antivirus scan was occurring. What I have next for you is a brief demonstration of Savant Enforcer in a live environment. I'm going to show first an unauthorized user or a hardened system where the user cannot delete, modify any executables that are on the whitelist. They can't run anything that's not on the whitelist, and they can't install any new executables. It's fairly common, my experience anyway, in the credit union environment, that the IT view of the world is they don't need to add anything. That teller machine doesn't need anything other than what we put on it when it left the IT department. I'll also show, as part of the demonstration, a privileged user who can have a superset or a subset of all of the different functionality available, so you could do any or all of the above depending on how it's configured. So I've just double-clicked on the Savant Enforcer icon here in the system tray to bring up the local user interface. And so you may be wondering, well, if this is a lockdown machine and that user has no privileges, is there any risk in them being able to pull up the user interface? And the answer is no, because if you look here, you'll see that everything is grayed out. And if we go look at some of these, we'll see that this user doesn't have the ability to look at their policies, get to any advanced functionality. They don't have the privilege of being able to install or request an install. They can't get access to any of this functionality. The only thing available to them is the ability to switch user, which would be the way that a local IT admin would come in and be able to make configuration changes or do installs on the machine, and I'll demo that for you in just a moment. So with this system in lockdown mode with all privileges denied, we started out by saying that you cannot delete an executable. And you see here this messaging comes from the XP operating system saying that you don't have permission to perform this action. Conversely, if a piece of malware attempted to modify an executable, rename it in order to be able to proliferate, for an example, Savant will once again prevent the modification of any executables that are on the on the whitelist. If this particular teller has internet access and goes off and tries to download something to this machine which is in lockdown mode and has no privileges, in this particular case, the Microsoft operating system is silent. And so they can try repeatedly to open or to save this executable to the machine, but in either case, the operating system is silent and Savant is preventing this from occurring. Now, there are additional notifications available within the Savant product. Most users find that Windows provides enough notification that you don't need the additional layer. However, if you did want to provide something specific to a user that said you're trying to do something that's unauthorized, if you believe you need this to do your job, that custom text in the pop-up out of the system tray here could provide a link to the IT help desk, could provide a phone number for the IT help desk and things like that. So if you want to provide messaging beyond what's available from Microsoft, that can be done as well. Lastly, I'll show you that here my teller that I'm beating up on has come to work with a USB stick, and apparently they were thinking that they could bring iTunes onto their computer. Of course, because it's not on the whitelist, Savant will not allow it to be brought onto the machine. Savant will not allow it to run from the USB. And again, you're going to see here that when you try to run it, in this case, there is a Savant message saying that that install has failed, that you don't have the correct privileges. So you can't bring anything onto the machine from an external storage device because it's not on the whitelist, and you can't run it from the external storage device as well. And the same would be true of a piece of unknown malware that somehow, I guess USB sticks are commonly left in parking lots as phishing attacks. Anything that tries to get on the machine as a result of a malicious attachment or a drive-by download at a website is going to be blocked from coming onto the machine and is not going to be allowed to run from that remote external storage device. Now we've got a fully protected and locked down machine. If we want to maintain it locally, the IT admin sits down, logs in as IT admin with their own credentials. Okay, so you see now that this Savant Enforcer client now has access to the full set of functionality, and so this system can be administered locally. Advanced functionality, the ability to view policies and or change policies, etc. This system is still in lockdown mode, and let's say that the assignment for the IT admin on this day is to install Skype click-to-call. Now, to shorten the length of the demo, I've already used the internet connection and gone off to the Skype site and downloaded Skype click-to-call. In order to do that, the IT admin would have put the system into protected mode. Again, the only difference between protected and lockdown is the ability to bring an installer onto the system. It won't run because it's not on the whitelist, and the only way it can get on the whitelist is to be installed through the Savant Enforcer. So I just tried to run it, and again, I'm told I don't have the privilege to do that. However, as the admin, because I do have these privileges, I can click Savant Install, browse to the file. We will automatically populate whatever file information is available, and depending on how you've configured the system, you may want the IT admin to indicate a reason for this install. And so teller might think they need Skype click-to-call because they've got a new customer that's in Europe or something, and that's the way they want to communicate with that customer. By clicking OK here, that's going to then go ahead and allow the operating system and the setup wizard to proceed with the installation, and with Savant Enforcer sitting in the background, logging every executable and creating a new unique hash for it. So I'm going to cancel out of that But so that's how a local install would take place. So that is the demo of the Savant Enforcer. I'm just going to quickly show you what the management console looks like, and just a couple of key areas for us to focus on. First, let's just take a look at the logs, and we'll be able to see the details of the events that I just attempted a few moments ago. We were trying to delete files and modify files, install new software, etc. And so now I've pulled up the logs for this particular client. As we go through the details here, we're going to see that I changed mode. You'll see lockdown mode denies when we attempted to make a change to an executable. And if we go down through this list, you'd be able to see, I tried to change files, I tried to delete files, and so on. So there's going to be a log entry there for every one of those events, which can be, as we said, stored locally or sent to another system. System intelligence is the feature I mentioned earlier that allows us to see everything that's on every endpoint. So for this particular demo system, there's not too much on it, but if we wanted to go and have a look and say, well, what's on there for Google-related kinds of things, we can see that we've got multiple versions of Google Chrome and Google Updater and toolbars and things. This happens to be one that I hear a lot where the customer will say, geez, I would really like to get rid of all of these toolbars because they just cause problems. And so you can see what you've got here, and if you wanted to unauthorize those Google toolbars in Savant, you'd simply get down here and you'd say, unauthorize the things that I've checked. This would create a batch command in the Savant Enforcer Manager, which would be communicated to all of the clients attached to it. That would automatically unauthorize Google Toolbar Notifier 4 and 5 from all of the systems connected to this central management console. In terms of managing groups and privileges from the central console, this is where you would configure the device control. If you wanted the USB stick on a particular endpoint or the USB port to not be allowed access on or off, this is where you would configure that by individual. And of course, the organizing principles can be by group, so you might have a group of tellers and a group of marketing people, etc., could determine what their privileges would be based on those groups. The last thing I'm going to show you on the management console, because this is not intended to be a real deep dive on everything, is managing trust. So the Savant system ships with about 125 pre-built filter sets, and a filter set is the rules that we've created that explain how a particular application or operating system will update itself. So in this case, we're looking at AVG, the antivirus solution. For each one of these executables that need to be trusted within Savant, we will designate this as a trusted agent. If we're looking to be more restrictive as to what a particular executable can do, for example, the scanner, we might say the scanner is allowed to run once and read all of the files on the system, but it's not a trusted agent. It's not allowed to change anything else. So these filter sets exist for the most popular applications and operating systems out there. Invariably, when we go into a new environment, the customer will have one or two or three applications that we've not seen previously because they were developed in-house or they're not as prevalent. And so the filter set library is extensible, and Savant will create whatever additional filter sets are needed to support that new customer's environment. So that covers the presentation and the product demonstration for this session. I'm just going to take a look and see if we have questions from our audience today, and if you have any questions you'd like me to respond to, please just drop me a chat. Here's the first one I have is, how do I make sure that I'm not whitelisting something unwanted? And the answer to that is that the best practices for deploying application whitelisting include applying the latest patches available for the operating system, although that's not going to apply after today with XP, or any other third-party applications like PDF readers or internet browsers, etc. So you want the system to be patched as currently as it can be. You'll also want to download the latest antivirus signature updates and run a full scan on the systems. We just showed you that Savant Enforcer includes a feature called System Intelligence, which allows you to see a detailed listing of all of the applications installed on the endpoint, and from where you can unauthorize executables that are outside of your organization's policies. For example, if you find the file sharing program BitTorrent on one of your machines, you probably don't need the aggravation of having that there and all of the implications along with it. Okay, so another question, will this solution work on XP ATMs? And the answer is absolutely. It will work on ATMs, point-of-sale terminals, industrial control systems, as well as laptops, workstations, and servers. Okay, so next question is, should I or can I continue to run antivirus on my endpoints? I would say that 80% of our customers run antivirus and application whitelisting side by side. Savant Enforcer will trust the antivirus program to download its new signatures and to scan for known malware, while Savant is protecting against the unknown stuff. I had a fellow who used to work with me here at Savant. He retired not too long ago, and his view was, we're in the Boston area, and not too long ago, or 10 or 15 years ago, Boston Harbor was cleaned up. And the first thing they did is they stopped pouring raw sewage into the harbor. And over time, as the tide came and went, the harbor cleaned itself. And I think the same is true in an application whitelisting environment. If you put us in place alongside of antivirus and you let the antivirus run for a couple of months, in all likelihood, anything that is known is going to be found, identified, and removed from the system by the antivirus component. However, anything new and unknown is going to be blocked by Savant. So what we've seen some customers do is run the two side by side for a period of time, and then once they're comfortable that everything that was known to be bad had been identified and removed by their antivirus, then they've gone ahead with just whitelisting. All right, so another question here. We noticed that you have a single lock for USB ports. Most motherboards have 4 to 6 USB ports, some in use with printer mouse, others. Can you lock individual USB ports, or is it all or none? I don't have an engineer in the room with me right now, but my understanding and my experience with the product is we don't, somehow this capability magically knows the difference between a mouse, a keyboard, versus a storage device. So if you set the external storage device to no access, we're not going to get in the way of printers and mice and keyboards, etc., but we are going to prevent any data files from going on or off of that external storage device. And if that is not a sufficiently detailed explanation, please let me know, and I will get with an engineer later this afternoon, and I'll send you a more specific response. But it's not individual USB ports. It's all or none, but we don't interfere with the important requirements for mice, keyboards, etc. Okay, that seems to be the extent of the questions that we have for today. I personally think 45-minute webinars are about as long as most folks can deal with. So I'm going to bring it to a close for today. If you would like a copy of the presentation, again, please just drop me a note here in the chat window. I'll leave it open for another 5 or 10 minutes after the end of the session. And as I mentioned earlier, we will put the recorded version of this webinar up on the website. Usually takes the guys a day or two to convert it from WebEx to whatever the format is that our website will accept. I see no more questions at the moment. I thank you all very much for joining me today, and I will send out a follow-up email to everyone who attended so that they've got my contact details, which I'm putting up on the screen here right now, but please feel free to send me an email. It's Rennie. It looks like Renee, but think rainy night in Georgia. And you can tell I'm from New Hampshire, a good French name. First initial, last name at savantprotection.com is my email. And you can reach me at 603-889-0944. Thank you again very much for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you.